Hey, I wanted to do a video about preparing to get yelled at by my boss. So basically, my boss just got back from vacation. I seen him for the first time today. He kind of gave me the cold shoulder. He was like, "Hey, Mike." I try to be upbeat. I know what he's pissed about. Um, there was two issues. One, I think he's being a little bit overboard on, like he's trying to look for something, and the other one, he's probably got a legitimate grievance to be pissed. Now, in both of these cases, I did nothing wrong, and I'm not saying that to like, I'd say if I messed up, I'm not a perfect person, but with the information that I had in the place that I was in, I did the right thing. First one was we were replacing an oil tank, and the two pipes that go out the house um, went up. First, one went up through a joist, and then through the side wall of the house, and then up again. And it changed size from 2 inch to inch and a half at that 90. So the hole through the joist was an inch and a half. We had all 2 inch pipe. And so in order for me to have replaced that, I would have had to increase the size of the hole in the joist, probably violating code. It probably already was, but just because it was pretty close to the bottom, I'd have to look up the exact code for punching holes. I don't like punching holes in joists, especially when you get like in these old houses. Anyway, I'm making a little bit of an excuse, but the second one was the oil line. Now I'm looking at the job. This is the first oil tank I've done. I never worked for an oil company before. Every company I worked for was a mechanical company, and I was paid to go in there and fix the machine, and that's it. There was no consideration for anything except optimizing the operation of the machine. Here, it is a lot to do with making the customers who are buying our fuel happy. It's a very different um, company, uh, kind of business model, really. The business is really focused around the oil sales and the oil customers and the propane sales and the propane. And I'm the guy who runs around and makes everybody happy. The or keeps them burning. The every other company I've ever worked for was I'm hired to fix the machine, and that's it. I'm the only reason I'm there is to fix the machine. You know, so I would have no incentive to do anything except to make it work as good as possible. Now, so I was never really put in charge of like oil tanks and stuff like that. That would be more like a first year apprentice guy. And even then, it really would never be fall onto my lap. And at any company I've worked for, here I'm the only one. I'm the only tech. There's one other apprentice, so that's it. Any job that needs to get done, I'm doing it. The ticket I was given said replace the oil tank. It didn't say replace the oil tank and piping. It didn't say replace the oil tank and fill and vent. It didn't say replace the oil tank and oil line. It said replace the oil tank. So I figure, hey, we got the piping to do it, but it's going to take an extra hour and a half. I don't have time in my day. I got 2 calls scheduled after this, and it's outside of the scope of work. So leave the old piping, move on. Boss saw it. He's like, oh, you should have changed the pipes going out the side of the house. Like, it didn't say to do that on my ticket. He's like, oh, I do that on every job. You didn't tell me. You never told me that. So with the limited information I was given, I felt I made the right decision. But he's like looking for something to nitpick. And I get it. You want it done that way, I do it that way. But you got to tell me that. You got to put it in the paperwork. You got to say this is included in the job. It's called scope of work. It's everything when it's getting the job done. And when my ticket says replace the oil tank, assume the scope of work that was bid was to replace the oil tank. So anyway, that's first and foremost. Second one was a diagnostic call. Again, I did nothing wrong. I show up, guys dumped oil all over the ground. The flame sensor on his primary control failed and then shut the system off after a flame failure, so it just kept pumping oil. And so what I did, it was an emergency call at night. I replaced the primary control. I tested the system. His heat worked. I burnt off. I cleaned up all the oil, and I tested and I made sure the safety worked, so that if it failed again, and I warned him that it probably would, that at least it would shut off the burner so it wouldn't spill oil all over the ground. So he calls back like 2 days later, said it went off again. And they sent me back out there, but they listed it as a callback, which implies I made a mistake. I was like, well, I didn't. I'm not going to spend all this time. It was an emergency call. I just want to make sure it was safe. So I go there the second time and I find like 3 problems. And I'm there for about 2 hours. The flex coupler on the oil pump was like partially stripped out, so that was skipping. The ignition transformer intermittently wasn't generating any spark at all, so that was probably the bulk of it as far as it going into flame failure. But then after that, it still was not burning right. It was not burning right at all. But this guy's sick as a dog. So he's like, I gotta go to the hospital, man. I'm not feeling well. I'm like, okay, I'll leave, but the system is not burning right. Your chimney is partially plugged up. That was the third thing. It's a terrible draft. You need to get your chimney cleaned. But I need to come back here because it's not burning right. But we need to correct this draft issue. He's like, all right. And then he calls up, and I don't collect anything from him the second time. And I do probably, he got a flex coupler and an ignition transformer and about 3 hours of my labor. And I didn't bill anything from him because he's like, I'm sick, and I know the job's not done. So I'm just like, okay, dude, I'm out, but we have to come back. And then he calls and he quits as a customer. He says, I'm going to take my oil business elsewhere. I don't trust your service technician. I don't like the service I'm getting. So he blamed it on me and quit. But he basically got like a $1,500 service call for free and made me look like a jerk. I really didn't do anything wrong. But the boss doesn't care. He's not going to care at all. He's going to say, I lost, $10,000 a year in oil sales from that customer. And he's going to blame that on me. And he's going to yell at me. And I know he's going to fucking yell. And I'm thinking of the shit I can say. And honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. He's just going to, he's pissed. He lost like probably $10,000 a year in oil sales. And he's going to just yell at me until he's done yelling. And that's what it means to work for somebody, it's going to happen. And I can say everything I just said. I did nothing wrong. I made the right decisions at every step. And it's not going to matter. The guy didn't want to pay the service call, or maybe he didn't care. Maybe he was shopping for cheaper oil prices anyway. But maybe he knew he was getting a $1,500 service call fee, and he said, no, I'm done. The guy left without getting a signature out of me. I'm not paying for that. That was the last. Or maybe he's like, that dude's a freaking idiot. I'm not having them back in my house. But you don't. Even if you didn't like the service tech, you don't really quit the oil company. I think it was financially motivated. Either way, whatever his motivation is, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm gonna get yelled at anyway, and that's what it means to work for someone else, basically.